Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Martin Bowen. I'm a client executive with ReSource Pro's retail vertical. And today I'm joined by one of my client partners, Jake Lansburgh, Vice President of Operations for Newfront. Jake.
Thanks, Martin.
Welcome.
Thank you. As Martin said, VP of Operations for Newfront. I've been at Newfront for almost 7 years now and have done everything from manage large service teams, manage small service teams, and now I oversee our back office operations as well as our small business unit.
Excellent. And today we're going to talk about business transformation of Newfront's small business unit and how they can achieve scale in a smart and methodical way. So as everyone knows, with small business presents its own challenges across the spectrum. Some are unique to certain companies, but there's a lot of commonality in those challenges. And today we're going to talk about how Jake reached out to ReSource Pro to discuss some of those challenges that he was facing. And I want to ask Jake a little bit about, what was the decision process first to think about using an offshore partner or a vendor, a BPO provider, and why ReSource Pro and maybe speak a little bit about some of the challenges that you were facing with your small business unit.
Definitely, thanks. Yeah, so we had historically had a mixed bag of how we handled small business. Some of it was done internally, and actually a lot of it was done externally by a different partner who had a managed account management service that was onshore, but not part of our company, but was transparent towards that, and transparent to Newfront. However, we were not super impressed with the service. We felt like we didn't have a lot of control, and the experiences for our clients were kind of all over the place. That coupled with a decision that Newfront made to actually expand our small business unit, and we did that simply by raising the threshold on what we considered to be small business. Looking at that new world, we needed a different staffing solution. We knew we wanted to bring most if not all of the account management in-house so that we could control the direct contact points with the client. And we also knew that we needed to be profitable in this endeavor, and we needed to make sure that it was accretive to the business in a way that could be competitive with our mid-market and enterprise business. And so that was effectively the challenge that we set out to do. And because we knew that we wanted to handle the account management side on our end and have full-time employees do that, we had to get creative with approaching a partner and thinking about how could we supplement the activities and supplement the work with an external partner. And that's when we called you guys.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you. So Newfront was looking at bringing transformative support to your small business operations, mainly for high-value type tasks where you can have then your folks focus more on external client-facing revenue generation opportunities. So we took that information back internally, analyzed it, thought of what would be the perfect solution for Newfront. And so we looked at our premier staffing end-to-end solution. So that's a mouthful, right? What is premier staffing end-to-end solution? Most of you work with, obviously, our teams and understand what an FTE is, the regular FTE. Regular FTE are highly skilled individuals that support your tasks. But in an 8-hour day, they could be working on claims tasks, pivot to billing, pivot to rating, right? It's filling up that time with really quality work for those particular tasks, but it's not really an end-to-end solution for a particular functional area in a cycle. So Jake's need was different. It was looking at the small business renewal process, right, from end to end. So from gathering the data, the detail, all the way through binding, through post-binding. And so we have premier staff. These premier staff, they are folks that are more experienced, highly skilled, 3 to 5 years generally with ReSource Pro or knowledge in the industry. Most of them are actually 7 years plus knowledge. So these folks bring a skill set. So we've tailored that solution with individuals that focused highly on renewal processing. And so, now so that was the solution that we employed those particular folks. Tell us a little bit about, from proof of concept, to start with that, how you integrated that team into your operations. How was the onboarding process? Maybe walk through that and how you decided to scale with those folks.
Yeah, definitely. So when we were structuring this team and building it out in our planning period, we took almost every workflow that you could imagine that a broker has to do.
Right.
And we went line by line on every step when you reach out to a client, how often you follow up, when you have to reach out to a carrier, how often you follow up there, what are the different steps? And then I forced my team. I don't come from an insurance background historically before Newfront, so I said to them, okay, I want us to be really strict about what do you need a license to do? What is it that's licensed? What is it that's high value customer facing? And let's highlight those things, and then let's look at everything that's left over of what you don't need to be, where that expertise is not required. And we highlighted all the things you needed. We wanted our team to be in front of the clients. We highlighted everything that you needed to be licensed for. And there was a lot of white space left on that spreadsheet of line items that needed to get done, but didn't fall into either of those categories. So that's how we boiled down basically what we knew we didn't want our internal team working on.
Right.
And we took that largely to you guys, and you guys were a great partner in really understanding that you were going to be part of the renewal process, actually a big part of kicking off the renewal process, reaching out to carriers, understanding what we need for the renewal, getting those applications pre-filled, and then helping us, and then working with our account management team to say, hey, these are pre-filled, please review them, and then ultimately getting them out to customers as well, and assisting with the follow-up there. We've invested heavily in our system as well, so that our customer experience is such that the customer actually oftentimes thinks they're hearing from the account manager most of the time. And so it'll be your team powering a lot of outreach, but it lands in the customer inbox as from their account manager. When they come back with a question, the account manager is the one to answer that. So we'll pull it out of the ReSource Pro team and say, oh, this is a license question. This is how do I fill out an application? We'll pull it out and bring it back there. The system that we've built allows us to do that, which is pushed a lot of that success. In terms of the onboarding, I will say it tested my patience in the sense of the ramp time to get going, but that was worth it because the pace in which we went, while I would always love to have things happen yesterday, it was necessary to go at a certain pace because the quality was there. And what we ultimately ended up with was a quality of work where it took some time to onboard somebody got going, and then once they understood what they were doing and once they got involved, very, very few areas of feedback, very few areas of improvement. The team really executed nicely on all of that. So we had a nice ramp period. There was plenty of questions, plenty of touch points with you guys going back and forth, understanding, great questions. And what I've noticed is in typical ReSource Pro fashion, and I've talked to other people this week about it, is your team comes back with questions and then there's suggested answers for those questions as well, which is so helpful because they said, hey, we've noticed this and we think in order to solve this, we could do one of two things. What do you think is the best option? And that, as a partner makes it so easy to work with you guys because to have that answer and to have those solutions delivered up to you makes it much easier when you've got a lot of other things going on and dealing with and say, oh, that looks like the right answer. Let's go forward and do that one.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Thank you. And yes, I understand that the ramp up plan for somebody with the patience of yourself seemed like a long period, but in all actuality, believe it or not, with the proof of concept starting with the 2 Premier FTE, we were able to ramp up and start processing within 3 months, which initially sounds like a long time, but the average for the industry has been 7 to 8 months to get that startup. So yes, I agree.
And now looking back on that 3-month period, it went by like that. I mean, it really did.
It did.
And the quality's there to match.
Absolutely. One of the things, though, we do preface with this is the more time spent up front with your teams, the better quality that you will get long term. As ReSource Pro, as you know, we want to ask the question once, and we want to document that and make sure we build that resource library internally. So as we do scale, we go back to that well. So thank you. Yeah, that was a very good partnership in getting the onboard going. One thing I'd like to ask, though, about the onboard, if you remember, we introduced then a hybrid approach to the onboard, right? So we started out, we talked about the Premier FTE being a high-skilled support element team, but we also partner it with our regular FTEs that you all know very well and work, because then we started looking at the efficiency of the operations and started segmenting and triaging the actual tasks to say, is this high value or is this routine? So, right, we had the regular folks started focusing on maybe download the expiring reports, feed that doc download, to the Premier team. Maybe talk a little bit about that, how you engineered that approach.
Yeah, I think it's actually important to started even earlier on, which is we had our full-time service staff, our account coordinators, which we call account coordinators or assistants, and account managers. We actually paired up with your team as well, and so this was work that they had on their desk, that they had on their plate every day, and so we paired them up to work with the Premier FTEs. We got the Premier FTEs ramped up, and then we as they got going and as they got good at it, we came back to you guys and we said, hey, we're looking at a couple of these tasks, and we're thinking about the other separate workflows that we have that support our entire business, not just small business. And there's some overlap here, and there's some things that the Premier FTE staff is working on that we think could be at a regular FTE level. And so that was a great collaboration because we were able to split up and change our staffing mix and staffing cost with you guys to say, hey, we don't need maybe as many Premier FTEs as we initially thought. We can supplement with some regular FTEs. There's significant cost savings there and an improvement to our bottom line, which is a North Star for me often. So
right, and we've only been doing this now a year. This started a year ago, and so we started with the 2 Premier. Then around August, we added another Premier and a regular. And then by the end of December, it was another Premier FTE. And now we added earlier this year a regular. So went from 2 to 6 FTEs, 4 Premier and 2 regular. So it's really been tremendous growth. And that speaks to the smart scaling, understanding the operations and where these folks integrate well with the process. And so they spent a lot of time working with your team, and your team was very patient and gracious to onboard that process, to spend a lot of time, because it's going to pay dividends. And as you said, you're looking beyond small business into other areas, possibly middle market.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's important to note that the main goal here was expand the small business team and increase profitability for the agency, and that was what we went after. And talking to a lot of the people that work at Newfront today, we were looking at the profit margin of the potential SBU, and it was not that exciting for a lot of people. It was like, well, this is a lot of small business. We have more small business than we would like to admit, which I'm sure people can relate to. And how do we make it more profitable? And this has been a key aspect of that, because to staff it simply with account managers and assistants across the board would not have realized that. And through this model, we increased our profit margin by about 5x by implementing this.
Well, that leads us into it. There we go. The impact, right? So
yes.
What does all this hard work and effort lead to? What's the impact been? And I think you're leading.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest areas of impact. And with that goes with we've been able to break some glass ceilings in terms of how many accounts an account manager can handle, what their time spent in front of clients are. So for the much smaller accounts, we've been able to give people a lot more accounts. The ramp up has been tough, and we're seeing our account managers finish their day in 8 hours. Finish that up and know that they have support. They're going to come back in the next morning. They're going to have deliverables from your team sitting in their inbox, ready to action on, and then being able to spend time answering the phone when clients call and getting on meetings with them when they need it as well. So that's been a huge impact, as well as I think educating our team and helping them realize truly what the important parts of the client relationship are. Issuing a certificate, processing an endorsement, getting an application pre-filled for a client are not necessarily the important touch points for an account manager and account executive, right? Being able to pick up the phone, answer the phone when they call, not have to push it to voicemail and call back, or reach out to them, when you're on an email thread going back and forth, and call them and say, hey, let's just talk about this. Those are the more important things, and that's what we've tried to really center our account management team around.
Excellent. Yes, and that's been done very well. Which leads to, Dan's discussion this morning talked about the 3 pillars of all transformation of operations, right? You start with standardizing data, standardizing workflows, which was a part of this process early on. And you had started that internally and then integrated us into the process to optimize those workflows, to infuse the Premier FTEs to help with that optimization. So those 2 legs of the triangle, so to speak, lead to the third, right? Digitization, employing more automation for scalability. So the work is not done yet, right? We're at 2 legs to the triangle, and over the next term, we'll be looking at where can we fine tune this, right? If it ain't broke, look at it again and then fix it so we can employ automation. So there's room for improvement and growth, and that's great.
Definitely. And speaking about improvement and growth, Newfront's unique in the sense that we built our own agency management system from the ground up. Your team did not hesitate to dive in and learn that system. And what's starting to happen now is I'm getting product recommendations from the team in China. Hey, can you talk to your developers about doing this differently? Can we maybe build a feature that does that?
Yes.
And so to have that level of user give influence and us try to solve those problems and try to prioritize that on our roadmap is a really cool experience as well.
And that's a very good point that you bring up, and you mentioned it earlier as well. Our teams will work with your folks to document processes and follow those processes, but they will also challenge you and come back if there's a better way of doing it, and they will recommend those best practices. And as I had mentioned to some of you today over the last 2 days, we have a very deep resource, and as Dan pointed out, over 60,000 types of processes and transactions that we do across the board. So whenever you're in a bind or have a question, ask us. We have somebody who's crossed that bridge, and we could basically help you out with that. So definitely they will come back and share that with you. They will not be shy about doing that, which is great.
And speaking on that, those 60,000 different moves that you guys will make, I had an experience just this morning where one of our producers reached out and said, hey, the ReSource Pro team is reaching out to this carrier and asking this question, and we don't have to ask this question, we should ask it like that. And after seeing that, I shot an email over to your team already, and I said, hey, can we make a change for just this carrier? So knowing that you guys will customize at the carrier level when we're working on a book of business with thousands and thousands of accounts is really comforting.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for sharing your experience with everyone today, and I know that's a whole lot of information. If anyone is interested in learning more about the premier end-to-end solution, please reach out to me or your client executive. They'll have more information for you, and we'd love to talk to you about it. But also take advantage of reaching out to Jake while he's here for the next 2 days. Introduce yourself and ask him about it. He'd be happy to share it
Definitely
with you. So thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us today.
Thank you.